We need to produce faster, better and more turbines, right? And not only turbines, but also the components that comes into the wind farms. And then on the other side, we need to invest much more in the grid infrastructure to capture that wind power and bring it back to the consumer. We've been for a very long time a supporter of the wind sector and been from very beginning trying to work with the industry and bring this particular industry into becoming one of the key pillars of the energy sector in Europe, but also worldwide. Our main contribution to the sector is connecting the wind farms to the grid and making sure that the grid functions with as much as possible renewable power and wind power, which also it's called technically the grid integration of wind. We do that with two main technology, AC, typical substations technologies, which works for onshore wind and some of the small offshore wind farms. And more recently and quite dominantly nowadays is DC technology, HVDC technology in particular, and that is particularly suited for the offshore sector and very large wind farms, bringing them in the grid.
Are you seeing much difference in terms of the on and offshore in general? Are you seeing there's much of a difference?
Surely the industry started with onshore wind and a few turbines, then more turbines, so everything became bigger, right? And when everything moved offshore, then everything exploded at a different scale, and we are talking about now a gigawatt scale wind farms. So the complexity of these projects evolved, and so we evolved our technologies and our capabilities and our expertise, right, to help the developers dealing with this complexity of the project. At the same time, the industry requested for a quite steep uptake of installations. Therefore, we also needed to invest a lot in our factory capacities to support the industry moving forward. So,
what about geographically? Where are you seeing most of your traction? Is it Europe? Is it US? Talking about the US, are you going to be affected by tariffs? Is that even an issue?
So obviously we are a global company operating all over the world. When we look at the renewable sector, and particularly the wind sector, is not as global as our business is. And Europe is one of our main areas where we are doing a lot of business in wind. And here we are working very closely with the policymakers, with the developers and with the grid operators to make sure that we do the right level of investment, and we are supporting the developers to build their projects as per ambition of the European Commission or the Europeans to become carbon neutral by 2050. Now, obviously, tariffs and all the situation right now that is happening out there affects everybody. But us being a global organizations, we always, throughout our history of more than 120 years, had to do with variations in demand and supply.
You can adapt.
So we can adapt from a demand perspective, we can adapt from a supply perspective to mitigate as much as possible this type of activities.
And what about the industry as a whole? Are you seeing the next 12, 24 months, are you seeing that as positive for you as a company?
Surely here right now in Europe, right, we need to think a little bit more how we bring wind power as a strategic energy pillar for Europeans and start investing much more into it. The investments have to come on a few fronts, right? First of all is how do we increase the capacity of the supply chain to deliver more. There is a lot of supply chain for the wind industry in Europe, but we need to increase further that. We need to innovate across that supply chain to produce faster, better and more turbines, right? And not only turbines, but also the components that comes into the wind farms. And then on the other side, we need to invest much more in the grid infrastructure to capture that wind power and bring it back to the consumers.
One issue I've heard of at this event is in terms of staff and recruitment. There just isn't enough staff. Is that an issue you're finding?
If you look at our webpage, we have thousands of job openings out there, right? And then we are trying to fill them as much as possible. So it comes not only to the challenge of amount of people that we need, but also it also comes to the skills of those people that we need. I've been meeting a few professors here, right, that are coming and look also at the situation in the industry. And there was also yesterday a fantastic session with 800 students from different universities across Europe coming here and look at what the industry needs and so on. So we are taking steps there. Surely we probably need to start accelerating also down in that part of supply chain, I would call it, right, which is human resources.
Tapping them up when they're young.
Exactly, tapping them up
Get
when
them in
they
the
are.
pipeline early.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. So you're perfectly right. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, well, pleasure. Thank you for taking the time
Yeah.
to speak to me.